personally, like I had people in my life where I've locked in for 2-3 months. Like when I came out with the book, I was during quarantine. I was locked in every day. Boom, boom, boom. And then when I come back to the picture, dude's looking at me different. Like I did something wrong. Like but it's not like I was even or I even put myself or I even showed myself that I'm better than them. It's just I had to distance myself for some time. But I don't think people really understand like when you do that when you're locked in on something, and then when you come back, that can I don't know. To me, it's always sometimes it affected my relationship with certain people. How about you?
It does, and this is what it is. Because it comes to here's what it is. You got to be okay with people being mad at you and hating on you. You gotta live with that, right? That's gonna always happen in your life because people will respect what you did if it was in another lane, or the situation was reversed. Let me give you an example. If you had been hooked on drugs and you said you went to rehab for 3 months and you came back, people would embrace you different. But because you decided to go better yourself under your terms, and it came out, you did something positive. Imagine how people look at you, right?
Yeah.
Like you did the same thing. You went in the hole. Let me go get this out of my mind and do what I got to do, and whatever. But they look at you different. You have to understand that. You know how the Bible say, "Lord, forgive them for they know not what they do." Mm-hmm. You got to start looking like that.
Welcome to Q's Health and Wellness Podcast, your source for living a healthier lifestyle and developing a better mind, body, and soul. Through guidance, tips, and stories of highly successful fitness gurus, athletes, and individuals who are passionate about enhancing all aspects of life, we provide you with the tools to help you take your lifestyle to another level. And now your host, Quinn Mitchell.
Welcome to Q's Health and Wellness Podcast. This is your host, Quinn Mitchell. Today I have a very special guest, once again, Dr. Daryl D.T. Henry. Thank you for coming on the show. How are you doing today?
I'm great, man. I appreciate being back for part 2.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So for people that was listening, on the first episode, we talked about how college athletes, they get adapted into the college atmosphere. And we also talked about the different things that are going on in the world. And one of the things that we had left off on that I want him to talk about is the generational wealth and how that's building. So if you don't mind, you could take from there, my man.
Yeah, so when we talk about generational wealth, man, a lot of people just don't think about how deep it really goes and how far back in history it goes. And many people today, they weren't a part of the things that happened prior that, just set up some good things for the majority today. So we were talking about a great show to watch on Amazon is The Men Who Built America. If you watch that documentary, The Men Who Built America, I mean, it really talks about, Carnegie and Rockefeller and Henry Ford and all of these people, and like I said, when they were building plants and steel mills and oil factory, oil refineries and all of that, they were hiring people in particular neighborhoods and people from particular communities that didn't look like you and me. So what happens when because you think about it now, if you're making good money now, if you're in a position where you own a home or you have a good job and you have benefits, think of what it does to you now, and then think about what that would have been like, 80, 90 years ago with your grandparents. And then we look at the things that were not just benefiting one community of white people, all right, but also things that were holding back another community. So let's remember that there's not, just because there's just as much as there's one side building one up, there's another side holding it back. But let me continue on the building up for a minute. So we talked about Levington houses back in New York when they built all these homes and put it in the deed where you couldn't sell to African Americans and you couldn't resell to African Americans. So 30 years later, those people have that kind of money. But then you also look at what happened in the 60s, okay? So the housing situation in the 40s benefited folks in the 70s. But let's go with the 60s. So when you're in the 60s, we look at Martin Luther King and all of that and the civil rights movement and Rosa Parks and all that, we won. But what a lot of people don't remember is what was called front lash. Front lash is a term I learned from Michelle Alexander in her book, The New Jim Crow. And frontlash is the response from the criminal justice system to the civil rights victories of the 1960s. So let me explain what I mean by that. When we won the civil rights victories and we got voting, there was a response by the criminal justice system that said, well, you can't vote if you have a felony. Okay, so how do you so that's not saying everybody had a felony. So how do you give people felonies? Well, you change the laws. All right, so now it became a crime to protest. It became a crime to for drugs or marijuana. Low-level marijuana crimes were now felonies. You know, try all these things. So you police the neighborhood, you introduce drugs into the neighborhood, and now you make drugs a felony. All right, a criminal act of drugs. So let's say an arrest of drugs. So now you look at the 70s. What was so prevalent in the 70s? What came out in the 70s? Nixon and his war on drugs campaign. So now you take a group of people that can now vote, this victory of voting. What's the response? Now we're gonna stop them from voting. Okay, you can't physically just do that. Flood the neighborhood with drugs, and now we're gonna charge people and make them give them felonies. Well, you say to me, Quinn, and the people listening, well, white people were on drugs too. But let's look at the crack cocaine disparity, right? Crack cocaine in the 70s, 80s, all right, you could get 5 years minimum if you had a gram of crack. In order to get 5 years for cocaine, you had to have a kilo. Now, you know, you can't make crack without cocaine. That's like you can't make lemonade without lemons, or lemon juice, or lemon concentrate, or lemon something. You just can't do it. So think about that for a minute. If you had 1 gram of crack, you could get 5 years in jail. And you had to have 1 pound of cocaine to get 5 years in jail. This is 70s up to the 80s, 90s, right? So how does that play out in society? The crack users, y'all know, hood, welfare queens, crackheads, all in the hood, black people, you giving the user 5 years. But while all the white people that snorting cocaine, 8 balls, gram, all these things, they're not getting time in jail. So now you got this whole group of people that are getting time in jail, and what happens to their record? They have a felony. So you got to think, the voting victory in the 1960s didn't even flourish the way it could have flourished, because immediately after we won that, there was all these laws put in place to give you a felony. You think of Clinton and his sentencing law, 10-20 life, 3 strikes and you're out. All of those laws gave black folk felonies. So now you have this whole community that's disenfranchised. All right, so how does voting look? It's not just a presidential vote. It's voting for your sheriff, voting for your superintendent of your schools, voting for your selectmen, voting for your mayor. You know, the local voting, you vote to have new schools. And I was living in a community one time where it was on the ballot where, do y'all want to build a new school in this community? You vote for that. So if you have a community of people that can't vote, then they can't vote to change their community or bring businesses into their community, and then they can't, let's say this, felonies prevent you from working. So now they can't vote and they can't work. So let's look at wealth. How are those people building wealth from 1965 to 1995 or 1970 to 1990? How are they building wealth? They couldn't work, couldn't vote, and that's not all people, but a majority or a large portion. You know this. You play sports. Mm-hmm. You could have 2 superstars on a team. But man, if you got 80-90% of that team trash or just being held back, and them 2 superstars gonna take you to the playoffs. You might even get to the last round, but it's gonna be hard to win the championship. The rest of those players, you gotta have an elite group. Then you gotta have like a above average group. There's some average players. There's some players that play their role. You got to have those layers. But if you just have rich black people, and then all these people down here poor, and you don't have a middle class, the community isn't held up. So that's how wealth played out over like 40 years, and people don't see it. They don't remember none of that stuff because they aren't looking at all of the pieces that were tied together with the housing, the criminal justice system, the voting, all of that. So then your generation is born, and I'm going along because I know we got to get there. Your generation is born, and they're like, well, how did we get here? Or how did these things happen? Well, it was years of a system that was trying to keep us out of making money. When the NBA teams were like $2,000, when the NBA used to be a drug-infested league, the NBA was crazy. Go back and look at the history. The NBA wasn't always the billionaire league it is today. When the NBA when the teams were able to be bought at a low rate, black people weren't a part of that. We weren't brought into those, we couldn't go to banks and say, well, let me borrow this amount of money to go buy the Chicago Bulls or go buy these. They weren't giving black people money like that back in the 60s. And so people wonder why there's no black Coca-Cola or there's no black Mountain Dew. Who had that kind of money and who was giving us that kind of money? I'm going to go here. I'm going to go ahead and let me give one more piece to it. Go watch W. Kamau Bell's United Shades of America. Recently, he just did one on farming. Look at farming, man. Look at the chicken you buy right now. Tyson chicken. That came from Tyson Farm. Purdue chicken. That came from the Purdue Farm, which is the Purdue family. So you think about it in the 1900s when they were raising chickens, or who came up with peanut butter, or who came up with jelly. Think about back in the days when they were first doing that stuff and they were selling it to people in the community. What they do, they went to a bank and said, okay, I need money to build my jelly brand or build my peanut butter brand. When they got that money from the bank, they hired all their friends. Do you think that a black person in 1905 that made some great peanut butter or some great chocolate? Now, we could also talk about George Washington Carver, right, with the peanut butter and all that. We can talk about that. But I'm just saying seasonings or liquor or beer or Budweiser, all these things, people that were black that made, you think they were able to go to a bank and say, I got this soda product that I want to get an investment on, and later on that soda product became 7-Up or, whatever y'all, whatever that, because we know Coca-Cola owns a lot of them, but that's what I'm trying to say. People don't see the long term of what's happened to people that have been helped and the people that have been not just not helped, but also denied. Because felony disenfranchisement and all of this denies you from doing certain things that people don't realize. Look at the marijuana industry right now. All of the people that are able to participate in the legal part of it don't have a record. But everybody that got a record for marijuana should automatically be placed in some type of program where they could do something in the marijuana industry. But you cannot have a record and work in the marijuana industry right now if you have a record for marijuana. How crazy is that?
It's crazy. But the one
so think about the wealth that all of those states that have marijuana decriminalization recreation now, what that's going to look like 10 years from now when they legalize marijuana across the country. The states that got a head start are predominantly white.
And it's crazy that you talk about this. Is the one reason I want to ask you is because you're in the school system, you're a teacher yourself. Why are these things never taught to us as when you have quote unquote Black History Month and things like that? We just hear about Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, but we never jump into this side or this deep side of why we don't have or we're not economically advanced as other people. So why do you think this isn't taught in the school system?
Well, they took it out because it's not, and here's the thing, it's not just not taught to us, it's not taught to white folks too. So if you think about running your own home business and taxes, tax breaks, tax benefits and all of that, many people don't know about it. And that's because they literally don't teach it to you in school. Like you don't learn about taxes in school. And they took that out on purpose. I think it wasn't Carnegie and Rockefeller, it was Rockefeller and somebody else. The name escapes me right now, but they actually took the taxes as a subject out of schools, right? And it's because they said they wanted to create a society of workers, not a society of thinkers. Okay? Yeah. It's written in a document. I'll send it to you after this. Watch Lynn Richardson. She's a wealth guru. So I just watch her stuff. She'll talk about it. But so they literally took it out, and they don't teach you these things because they don't want us to know it. And what happens is other communities don't know either. Like white communities don't know. So there's poor white communities. We can talk about white ghettos and poor communities all day. I do research on that. People just don't know about them a lot. But there's all of that as well. It's like they don't know the tax code and all of that as well. But there's the elite do, and so you see a majority of rich that are, you know, white versus black. But it's purposely done to not, for us not to know. And it's just like, if you want to control people, you just, you know, you choose what knowledge to give them and what knowledge not to give them. And I think if people knew all of the things that happened historically to us as a society, you might get a lot of people that were more on the same side. And you know, the leaders don't want that. You know what I mean? Once the people unite, you know, they don't. That's when you get the whole, you know, just gonna get a lot more than you bargained for. Let's say
definitely, that. Definitely. And another thing I want to ask you as well, being a teacher, being in the education system, honestly, I've been to 3 or 4 different schools, played basketball. I maybe seen, including you, I maybe seen 3 black teachers within the whole school system. So the question I want to ask you is, being black and being in the school system, has there been times, without getting any specifics, has there been times where you've been in situations where the system would ask you to conform or try to get you to be less real about certain situations, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And I think, you know, for me, in those situations, I've had to stand strong and say, okay, I understand what people think I should do. But being that I am the only one in the room, that's me. It's a moment for you all to learn what should be done, because in this particular situation, I'm the expert. And that's just that, you know. I mean, you know, if I'm the only one in the room that look like me, and it's a situation about people or students that's like me, and y'all are actually asking for my opinion, or I'm in charge of it, or the situation has been brought to me by the students, and we are already in an understanding. You just need to tell me your side of it. You don't need to tell me, you know, what I need to conform to, because I'm bringing the information just straight on the table. Yeah. And maybe what you think I need to conform to is the reason why the situation is the way that it is. So let's take it, I'm taking all that off the table and saying, let's start raw, because I'm giving you brand new information that you might not have known. This is how students feel, or this is the situation that we're in, and, you know.
But DT, do you think that a lot of black teachers in that situation, do you think they're scared of like the system and like the backlash of being real and being confrontational to certain situations?
I think there's a lot of layers in it, because you have, you know, I'm gonna drop a lot of names in this, man, and I do it because I respect people's research. Dr. Travis Bristol does research on retention of black male teachers, and he talks about in certain schools you get loners and groupers, and sometimes you're the only person in the school, and then sometimes you're a few. And, you know, in our reality, you know, people do have to, you know, think about their paychecks in certain situations, because they're providing for their family. So, but I wouldn't say everybody is scared. I would say, like, there's layers in it, and you have to pick your battles. And I think that's even if you if the system was the other way too, you need to pick your battles. And a lot of times where we see the results of the situation aren't always where the situation starts or where the decision is made. So what may seem like a person not saying nothing might be a person working their way from teacher to guidance counselor to principal to superintendent to make those decisions. Some, you know, people have their ways of fighting the system. And that comes in a variety.
No, definitely. And another question I have for you is, so you know, like with the basketball, how they're kneeling about the protests and everything. So between me and you, I've had old coaches, and I mean, I've even been in the system where if the coach told us, like, even with everything that was going on, because you remember when I was playing this, like, it was just coming on the rising. And I've been in systems where coach told us, like, if you kneel, like, I'm kicking you off the team, like, you're going home. Like, I've literally been told that from coaches. So why do you think, personally, coaches don't understand, or just certain individuals don't understand, like, the symbolization or the meaning behind what we're trying to accomplish behind kneeling, or just in any situation, just trying to bring social justice or social light to different situations around the world? Like, I feel like older coaches or older individuals are just so stuck in the way over, like, you disrespecting the flag, but I don't think they really understand
Right.
what we're trying to say or what we're trying to do as a people.
Mm-hmm.
So can you speak on that a little bit?
Yeah. I think it goes back to education and a couple things like experience, observation. A lot of people think we're all right. You know, they think, you know, it's been, we got it good enough. Okay. So I remember asking this before, what was the best decade for Black people to live in, right? And so I think people believe, well, it's good now, so let's not rock the boat. But I look at the social justice cause of Black people and things like police brutality and violence in this world, or in this country by government officials, let's say that. And what that cause was about, police brutality, let's just call it what it is. I look at that cause the same way I look at equal pay. And let me bring it into a bigger light, not just the police brutality piece of it. I think the police brutality is a part of a bigger cause of, let's say, just racism and oppression in general. So let me clear it up. I look at the racism and oppression the same way I look at equal pay for women. And let me phrase a question from that. Have women ever had equal pay?
No.
Right. And so, like I said, I'm not surprised to see the fight for equal pay is still going on. I'm never surprised when I hear somebody talk about it, because they've never had it. And so as Black people, we've never had equal rights. There's always been some law, something, some this or that, that's disproportionately impacting Black people and not giving us just a fair run. You understand what I'm saying? Like, man, we go deep. That's that Clarence Thomas's stance.
Mm-hmm.
And people don't understand him about that. Clarence Thomas believes that if you just line all of us up even and take away the barriers, we'll see who wins.
Mm-hmm.
That's why he don't believe in handouts. But people don't understand what he means by that. And, read a couple of I read a book on him and understood that. So you think about it, that's why I asked about the best decade. Because in every decade, there was something holding Black people that was large. It wasn't like, oh, we just woke up in the morning and just decided to be lazy. No, there's all these things that are holding us back. Like the disenfranchisement. Like there's literally people participating in the marijuana business and they're not getting arrested for it. And we all got cousins and friends and everybody that sold a bag of weed and they're doing 3 years, 2 years, 5 years. Really, I live in Massachusetts where you can legally walk around with an ounce of marijuana and you do not get arrested. If I was in Florida, where I'm from, and did that same thing, we might have, now the laws in Florida have changed a little bit now, but we're gonna have a problem, all right, in some of these states, okay? Think about stuff like that, So when I look at coaches and assistant coaches or whatever they're saying, and what they just don't understand the large scale of what the protest is about. The protest should bring attention to your cause and what you're fighting for. That's what the protest does. It brings attention. We were talking about police brutality, but literally when Colin Kaepernick started kneeling, it brought attention to his cause. So the protest actually did exactly what it should do. Now, people didn't want to take into account that he had talked to other people and veterans and this and that. And because the media is so strong, they were able to shift people's thoughts to disrespect before we even got going with the cause. Because if you think about it, Colin Kaepernick stopped kneeling 2-3 years ago. That did not stop police brutality. It didn't. You know what I'm saying? So to me, the reason why they don't understand it is because they don't have the education, they don't have the experience, they don't have the observation to understand the large scale of what we are processing about. Because for every decade, every year, there's still this major entity, policy, some type of oppression that's directly impacted us. Like, we couldn't even get through COVID fair. COVID came out and it was like, okay, COVID's killing everybody. And it was like, oh no, COVID killing Black people. At this point, like, dang, it's always, every decade we got some worse end of the stick. Mm-hmm. But people don't understand that's what we're still protesting about. So it's not always just one situation. So they'll never see it. But not I say they won't. A lot of people won't see it that way until something over the top happens.
No, definitely. I definitely appreciate your input on that. And just to change the subject, something I want to talk to you about as well. Like, you're one of the most successful Black people that I know, because you're like your teacher, you got your doctorate degree, and plus you got a couple books coming out. So what has made you so really successful in your ways? Because when I look at it, I ain't gonna lie to you, DT, as I'm starting to grow and I'm starting to become more successful myself, I'm starting to realize, like, there's certain people around me start to look at you different when you start to elevate and become a different level of success. So to me personally, I've been really just by myself lately, and I just really start to really pick and choose, like, the certain people I be around, because the same people that was like with me before, it's like they look at me differently now, but it's like without me even doing anything, I'm just in my own lane doing my own thing. But it's just their outlook on you. They think, oh, you're too good for them, or you feel like I don't know. You know what I'm talking about. But how have you become so successful, and then how do you basically keep those people away from you, in a sense?
Okay, so one of the things that I do is I have to remind my friends. I had to remind my friends and remind people. Sometimes, not everybody, but that everybody's successful in their own lane. So I'll give you an example. Like, I have some friends that somebody may look at and say, well, DT, you're a doctor and your friend works, warehouse management. I have friends that do that stuff. And they say, well, you're more successful. I'm like, no, it's not necessarily that, because my friend is a father of 2 kids. And in that lane, in his life, he's doing what he needs to do to take care of his situation. And he's running at the top of his game in his situation and being a father and all that. So there's responsibilities in his life that I don't have. So I don't know. I might not be successful in that, right? And so I always try to remind people how much I respect their success too, because I feel like they're doing their lane. I just decided to do my lane. The other thing I would say that I do is as you grow and succeed, you're gonna be in the room with new people. And in the words of, let me preface this with something. In the words of the great Jay-Z, people look at you like you changed, like you're supposed to stay the same, but you're supposed to change. As you learn and as you grow, you should go into new areas and start thinking different and start changing, and because you've learned more. If let's say you're saving $1,000 a month, and you're 22, you save $1,000 a month, but you spend $600 and go to the club. So the first of the month you save $1,000, you spend $600 a month, and then a year later, somebody tell you, hey man, you save that $600 a month, you go end off with this at the end of the year, and you can buy this building over here. Now you're not going out to the clubs, but you're finna buy this building. You changed. You should have changed. Somebody told you something else that you could do with your money. It caught your attention, and now you change. People don't realize you change with everything. Let's keep it real. You go out, you've been out nightlife, you're a young man. You might was drinking what you drank at one age. Then one day you went somewhere, somebody put you on to a new drink. You changed your drink choice. That was just growth, knowledge. So if you change where you put your money, if you start changing where you put your focus, if you start changing where you put your energy, where you put your mind, you have to respect yourself enough to know that, hey, this is just my life and this is what I'm doing, which is what you say you are. But also be able to explain it to people like, I'm not losing my roots and my foundation. Actually, it's my foundation and my roots that allow me to recognize I should be changing, because people around me that got out of my situation, they changed, so they didn't change, oh, I'm better than you. It's, no, I'm going to take what we both learned together and go do my thing, like you should take what we both learned together and go do your thing. You know what I mean? Just because I applied, if me and somebody grew up together, we have the same principles. Just because I applied my principles to my lane, don't mean I'm knocking you for applying your principles to your lane. Okay, so you have to keep reminding people of that, and that's what. And then if you keep reminding yourself of that, you don't really get that animosity and have to keep people so far away from you. You just understand, like, I deal with people as I deal with them. When I'm in Boston working and teaching and all that, I'm not calling people every day as when I'm on vacation for 2-3 weeks, and I call you every single day. So I wasn't better than you for those 8 months. I was just doing my lane. And that 8 months could turn into years and years and years. And it's not bad. It's just, I was doing what I needed to do to get successful in my lane, just as other people should be doing what they need to do to get successful in their lane.
Yeah, but DJ, this the part I want to talk to you about, dude, because it's, like the point where you say you lock in for like 2-3 months, and then the people that you talk to, you don't talk to no more. But then when you come back in the picture, it's like they look at you differently, but it's like you was literally just doing your own thing. That's what I'm saying. Like, to me personally, like, I had people in my life where I've locked in for 2-3 months. Like when I came out with the book, I was during quarantine. I was locked in every day. Boom, boom, boom. And then when I come back to the picture, dudes looking at me different, like I did something wrong. Like, but it's not like I was even, or I even put myself, or I even showed myself that I'm better than them. It's just I had to distance myself for some time. But I don't think people really understand, like, when you do that when you're locked in on something, and then when you come back, that can, I don't know, to me, it's always, sometimes it affected my relationship with certain people. How about you?
It does. And this is what it is. Because it comes to, here's what it is. You got to be okay with people being mad at you and hating on you. You got to live with that, right? That's going to always happen in your life, because people will respect what you did if it was in another lane, or the situation was reversed. Let me give you an example. If you had been hooked on drugs and you said you went to rehab for 3 months and you came back, people would embrace you different. But because you decided to go better yourself under your terms, and it came out and you did something positive, imagine how people look at you, right?
Yeah.
Like, you did the same thing. You went in the hole, let me go get this out of my mind and do what I got to do and whatever. But they look at you different. You have to understand that. You know how the Bible say, Lord, forgive them for they know not what they do? You got to start looking like that. Think about when Kanye went off on Jay-Z on stage. Jay-Z had to understand he going through it. I get it.
Yeah.
He going through it. He think I dissed him, but I didn't diss him. I had to go build title. I had to go build this. I had to go build this with my kids. I had to go do this. You had to go. You was in quarantine. I don't know what you went through the first month, but the second month you felt like you had to write this book. You had to get it out. You had to go do something. If you had got hooked on drugs and you had to go to rehab, people would respect that. So you have to understand and forgive people for they know not what they do. I know you mad at me, and you might not talk to me for 6 months, but I'm going to still love you, and I'm going to be down for you. And even 6 months from now, when you come back, I'm going to still be cool with you. Now, you just have to accept that. People get mad at you for trying to be successful. That's going to happen. And the reason why is because, and people are right on one end. We get criticized for being confident, arrogant, cocky. People say that about you. Right? But here's the thing. When you're trying to be an entrepreneur, you don't have commercial sponsorship. You don't have CNN behind you. You don't have ABC, NBC. You don't have a commercial right now. So you have to be your own advertisement. You have to be your own marketing. And that looks arrogant. It looks cocky. But really it's you marketing your business because you're not sponsored by no. It's you being an entrepreneur. Now, 5 years from now, your company grows and you're worldwide, you got commercials planned and this and that and whatever. Nobody will think, they just think you're just doing that as part of your business. But right now, you are your own commercial. You are your own marketing. And people don't understand that because they're not doing entrepreneurship.
Yo, it's crazy because you said it, because I don't know how many times I've had women and different people just be like, oh, yeah, Quinn's arrogant, he's cocky. But like you said, it's not even that. It's just I'm in my own lane just doing my own thing right now.
You gotta pump yourself up, right? You gotta be the guy that, like, it's, and this is what you can be honest, people don't realize how hard it is. You sit there and you gotta put out all these pictures about yourself, and you critiquing yourself all day long, but you know you gotta put the content out. You know you gotta put these things, you know you gotta market, you gotta get the commercial out, you gotta get the story going, you gotta get the Facebook going, you gotta get all these things going. And that's the thing, you get all this hate, and it's hard, and that's why when you meet Mark Zuckerberg, or when you meet Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk or Tyler Perry or T.I. Killer, you meet all these other people and they say, yeah, when I was coming up, I had haters. Because it's hard to talk about yourself and not have people say, you talking about yourself too much. Of course I'm talking about myself too much. I'm talking about my company. I'm talking about my business. I'm talking about my book.
Yeah.
I have to, because who's talking about it for you more than you?
Nobody.
Right. But if people aren't in that business, they don't do. People expect Bill Gates to talk about computers. He's talking about himself and computers and this and that. I expect you to talk about your book and this and that, but if you're not in that lane, you don't get it. And you have to be okay. That's why it's hard being that, because you have to be okay with people hating on you.
No, you're right. And one last thing I want to ask you before I let you go, is just jumping back to when you spoke about just having a real core foundation as just being a real person. Because DT, you know, between me and you know people that it's just like if they get a little bit of money or if they get a little bit of success, like they switch like this. Like they have no core foundation. Like, you know, people that will do anything just for a little moment of success. So what has made you, or what has kept you so strict to your morals and your foundation? Because to me, it's like I can't go away from what got me here. Like, you feel what I'm saying? Like, I can't switch up on myself and knowing that if I got to another level, it's because I gave up my morals and my foundation. Like, not many people around here really like that no more.
Right. I understand where you're coming from. I'm on a group in Facebook. It's might be the Black Doctoral Network or PhD Finished or something like that. And somebody said, well, if you have an associate's degree, once you get your doctorate, when you have an associate's degree, do you tell people that you have it? And I answered and said, yeah, I let everybody know all my degrees at all times. And I said, I do use my associate's degree because you never know who you're inspiring. And I talk about my associate's degree a lot because it's where I played JUCO football. And I come from Miami where football is big, man, and you respect the game. You know, you could play JUCO, go to 4 year, then get to the league or whatever, but everybody trying to get there, man. You got, it's just, football is what drives you, keep you going through school sometimes and all that. We talked about that last time, how football is a great retention tool in sports and in general and in college. So to me, talking about the associate's degree and acknowledging that is like a root for me. That's me keeping to my roots. And that not just come from the degree itself, it also comes from the roots of football and what Miami and all of that did to me. So even though I work in a different space, not at a different level, I still work with athletes, and I'm always dealing with football and basketball players and students of color, no matter where I am in the industry. And I think for me, I don't go away from it because I'll always know what that group needs. Like, that still drives me. Like, I'm still entering spaces that I don't know everything. So what drove me to go to college and do all that then is still driving me now. So as you said, you can't go away from it. I don't think you should go away from it, because that's the base of who you are. It's like a car, you know, Rolls Royce, Lexus, all that. You get a new model, but that base, that engine is still there. They may upgrade it, but that base is still there. And I think if you, let me add to that. You can keep that core too, and also have other branches. So it's not like I only still work with those students. I now have other branches, but I'm always going to go back to that. I think that's a good thing, because it's the lane you stand on all the time. Now, you can cut down all of my branches, I'm still gonna have this root. I'm a big Jay-Z fan. I think with Jay-Z, all of the businesses that he has, he always comes back and drops an album. Like, I'm a rapper still. Like, I come back to that. That's gonna get me what it is. So I'm all, anytime I'm in some place, I'm always looking for the football players, the basketball players. I'm always looking for those groups. When I start a new job at a college or something, or when I'm in a new environment, where's that group? Where's those mentorship opportunities? Because I know they're needed.
And the crazy thing that you say that, and before I let you go, it's like, it's really inspiring that you said it, because you even you have a doctorate degree, you never feel like you're too good to relate back to the athletes or where you came from. And to me, like being playing JUCO basketball, it's like, even when I go to the park and I play with kids, it's like I always ask them where they from, and because I always had somebody that I was looking up to, and sometimes the people that are in those situations that was where I once was, they don't have that mentorship. They're looking for somebody to look up to.
Right.
And to me, that the fact that you say that is really inspiring, to see that how humble you are as a person, because you could have a doctor's degree and say, you know what, fuck everybody else, fuck JUCO, I don't care about them no more. But the fact that
I'm beyond that now. Nah, the thing is, I actually want to go back and inspire that, because like, that's what I'm saying, man. Like, we're right there. I want more football players to believe they can get the doctorate. I want to find other guys that got doctorate, and that's what I do. Like, even now, man, I run across guys that they play basketball, they become this, they become that. Look at yourself, look at all these people, and I want kids to know that, like, you can do more after you're done with that career. So I want to sit around, like I said, with 20 guys that play sports, and now we are doctors, and we talk to the youth about, well, this is what we do now, because you don't play sports forever. Remember, that's your second, what's your second career? And so I have to inspire. I got to let kids know you can be from Miami, play cornerback, you can have a tattoo, you can listen to rap, you can go to church, you can do all this and be successful and still, do this, do that, go here, go there. You don't have to just be this stereotype of, well, if you're successful, you don't do X, Y, and Z. Nah, you can do all that now, man, because when you really look at people that's doing it, they do all that. And the media don't show a lot of people of color, the successful high middle class people that are doing it. There's plenty of black professors that are out there studying dolphins and oceanography and all kind of stuff that you wouldn't think about, man. But, too often on TV, all we see is the black fight in the mall when the new Jordans come out.
Nah, you real. And then crazy.
You know what I'm saying?
Part 3 of our podcast is gonna be dating. I'm gonna have you back on dating a man with 6 figures. You talk about that because, like I said, a lot of people they don't have people that they can look to or people that they can go to with this kind of game and this kind of advice. That's why I'm bringing you on the show, because I dealt with you at Dean my whole life. So it was like when I seen you, you always chopped it up and you always gave me game. But a lot of people they don't have that mentorship, so they're looking for that.
I got you, man. Yeah, we gonna get into that, man. I appreciate it.
You already know. So if you don't mind, before I let you go on this one, you mind just telling us about your book that you got coming out?
Okay, so the book that's coming out, I think it's dropping the 25th. It's pre-sales coming out. It is How to Go to College on a Football Scholarship. It's for guardians, parents, single parents, Pee Wee, Little League, high school, and JUCO football players. And it's about 7-8 questions that I've been asked over my career from football players, basketball players, all these, players about going to college on a scholarship. And there's so much into it about like how to look for different colleges, because you can have the athletic piece, but then there's also the applying and application piece. Mm-hmm. So you want to know how to look for colleges, how to raise up your GPA, how to expand your recruiting attention. If you're a JUCO player, how to transfer your credits from one school to the next. How to increase your credits, the number of credits you have to be a sophomore in college and be eligible to play at D2, D3. What's clearinghouse? What's all this information about financial aid? How can you combine academic and athletic scholarship? Mm-hmm. Where do you even look at different college locations? Because it's different between rural and city and all these things. And it's just a basic guide for if you have a kid or you're young playing these sports, playing a sport of football, and you want to know just some basic things on how to get going on a scholarship for college, should check out this book. We get into huddle and 7-on-7 and things that you should have.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I appreciate you coming on the show, my man. Like I said, for part 3, we did next week. We definitely gonna shoot it off.
All right, man. I appreciate it. I look forward to it. Y'all be good.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Q's Health and Wellness Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe or to leave us a review on iTunes or the listening platform of your choice. Also, please check us out at QuinnMitchellII.com, as well as find us on Instagram for more useful content and resources.